The term Silk Road refers to a network of routes used by traders for more than 1,000 years from when the Han Dynasty in China opened trade back in 130 BC. It went on all the way until the 14th century. During those wars in the 14th century, the Crusades as they were known, the Ottoman Empire closed off trade with Western Europe. German geographer and traveller Ferdinand von Richthofen has first used the term Silk Road in the 19th century. It basically described the well-travelled pathway of goods between East Asia and Europe. The Silk Road is over 6,000 kilometers long and covers some of the most inhospitable terrain on the planet. It has the Gobi Desert and the Pamir Mountains. A whole bunch of commodities were traded on the Silk Road, from precious stones to porcelain to tea and of course silk, from where the name derives itself. In fact, one of the most famous travelers on the Silk Road was Marco Polo, a trader from Venice who traveled all through Asia in the 11th century. The modern-day version of the Silk Road was initially called the One Belt, One Road. It was later rechristened the Belt and Road Initiative. It was a pet theme of Chinese President Xi Jinping, almost like a dream project for him. Xi Jinping unveiled the Belt and Road Initiative in a major speech that he gave in Kazakhstan in 2013. He followed that up with a speech at the Indonesian parliament where he talked about the maritime Silk Road. But today, 10 years later, Xi Jinping's pet project has run into the ground thanks to an unlikely ally and friend, Russia. On Crux DeCode, how Russia's war in Ukraine has thrown the Belt and Road Initiative into deep jeopardy. China's BRI is currently the largest geo-economic initiative in the world. It involves more than 140 countries. It'll be profoundly reconfigured by the war between Russia and Ukraine. For China, the vast Russian landmass was one of the most reliable land routes for the Belt and Road. China was planning to invest tens of billions of dollars building a huge network of roads and railways lines to send goods to the rich European market. In fact, Russia, Ukraine, Poland and Belarus were all hoping to be part of the Belt and Road Initiative. The BRI was later integrated into the New Eurasian Land Bridge, or the NELB, which is mainly a rail network. It's a connectivity vision that was floated by Russia for its near abroad. Now, these land connectivity dreams have been potentially killed by Putin's war. And that is a severe headache for China. Within the Belt and Road Initiative, there was also a subgrouping called the 17+1, which is a BRI cooperation platform between China, which is the one, and 17 Central and Eastern European countries. Now, to be fair, even before this war began, the BRI was already facing rough weather. There was the pandemic, therefore countries including China were reluctant to invest huge amounts of money in infrastructure. And then, of course, there was the decoupling between America and China. But the war in Ukraine has paid put to any dreams of reviving the Belt and Road. While Beijing grounds its BRI in the mystique of the ancient Silk Road, its primary land route to its targets in Western Europe goes through the NELB. These were a series of railroads through Central Asia and Russia to eventually reach the European continent. Now, this route is so important that Chinese officials did not have a backup plan for relying overly on Russia. And now, that lack of a plan B is looking ominous. Many experts have noted that the NELB route will become increasingly problematic after this war. The security issues that have been brought forth by this war have severely highlighted the inadequacies and the complications involved in using this route. Western sanctions have already made Russia a very, very difficult country to work in and to work with. Major logistics firms have already withdrawn from Russia even before this war began, and even before sanctions forced them out. European countries like Germany, Poland, the Netherlands, these are all countries which once had ambitions of being key hubs for the Belt and Road Initiative. They've now totally given up on any form of economic ties with Russia. Instead, they are at the forefront of economic sanctions against Russia. All of these factors make it increasingly necessary for China to look to an alternate route, which is where the lower tier or the second half of the Belt and Road Initiative comes into focus. This second half, or the lower tier of the BRI, goes through Iran. Now, this second route also happens to be tricky. This route has faced various challenges, mainly because of the major economic sanctions placed on Iran. Remember, Iran's been under the weight of sanctions since the collapse of the nuclear deal back in 2015. Now, while the Chinese government has no qualms doing business with Iran, the fact is that Chinese state-owned and privately owned companies cannot completely escape the breadth of sanctions in case they were to do business with Iran. Over the last few weeks, though, there's been a flurry of activity surrounding the expansion of trade through Iran and countries to its immediate east and west. But the most important areas for the BRI are the key sub-regions in what is called China's near abroad. There's Central Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. BRI projects in these three regions are often spoken of separately and on their own terms. But Chinese officials are now seeing significant economic potential as well as complementarity in trade between these three regions: South Asia, Central Asia, and of course Southeast Asia. But the problem is the connections between South and Central Asia are increasingly becoming difficult to get around. There are two big complications. In South Asia, for example, the biggest country is India, and India's own ties with China have been strained for the last couple of years because of a border dispute. More importantly, for all the support, all the money that China has poured into Afghanistan, it is extremely wary of passing some of its major trade routes through a country controlled by the Taliban. Also in Pakistan, China's major investment is in Gwadar, a port that is in the restive province of Balochistan, which borders Iran. In Balochistan, locals are protesting against Chinese projects, and also there are concerns raised by neighboring Iran. So this is particularly problematic considering that China's investments in Pakistan are located in Balochistan, in Gwadar, and which is just a stone's throw away from Iran. Also, it doesn't help that Gwadar is a long way off from Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, which are the two economic spokes in Central Asia. So this dream project of linking South Asia and Central Asia and eventually all the way through to Eastern Europe, that seems to be stuck for political as well as economic reasons. So all in all, China's ambitious One Belt, One Road looks jinxed. But beyond the short term, China must bypass both the Russian and Belarusian support and maybe the entire Ukrainian geography itself. The BRI's other corridors will inevitably gain more salience for connections between China and Europe. The Central Asia, West Asia corridor is likely to become more significant in Chinese thinking. By transiting via Central Asian countries, the Caspian region, Iran and Turkey, the BRI can bypass Russia and then reach Europe. But then geoeconomics is a tricky business, as China has recently found out through the Ukraine war.